I didn't just watch 1,000 hands, I lived them. I immersed myself in the digital archives of thousands of decisions made by recreational players, spanning the spectrum from the local $5 home game to the mid-stakes online arenas where the money starts to feel very real. My goal was simple but ambitious. I wanted to deconstruct the amateur blueprint. I wanted to find the exact moment where logic fails and instinct takes over. Because that is where the money is lost. What I found was a chilling level of consistency. It wasn't a lack of intelligence. It was a lack of a system. When you watch a professional play, you see a machine, a series of calculated frequencies and risk-reward ratios. When you watch an amateur, you see a narrative. You see a human being trying to solve a puzzle with their heart instead of their head. This heart-first approach is the fundamental reason why the vast majority of players will never see a positive return on their investment. They are playing a game of cards, while the winners are playing a game of human psychology and mathematical probability. This script, this tragedy of errors, repeats itself every single night, in every casino and on every poker app in the world. The faces change, the flags next to the usernames change, and the stakes fluctuate, but the decisions remain identical. It is a cycle of safe choices that lead to catastrophic results. Most people think a poker mistake is a massive, spectacular blow-up where someone shoves with nothing. But the truth is much more subtle. The real mistakes are the small, quiet ones. They are the standard calls that you make because that's just how poker is played. They are the folds you don't make because you felt something, and the most dangerous part. When you are in the middle of it, it doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like logic. It feels like instinct. It feels like you are doing the best you can with the cards you were dealt. But after watching 1,000 hands, I can tell you that doing your best is the fastest way to lose your bankroll if your best is based on flawed recreational habits. These small mistakes compound. They aren't isolated events. They are a systematic leak that drains your win rate until there is nothing left. This video is not meant to be a lecture. It is meant to be an intervention. I am here to expose the patterns that you probably don't even know you have. Because once you see them clearly, once you see the matrix of the game, you can never go back to being a victim of them. And the moment you stop making these 5 core mistakes, your edge at the table doesn't just grow, it explodes. You will find yourself winning pots you used to lose and saving money you used to donate. Pay attention because we are about to go deep into the mechanics of why you are losing money right now. The first and most widespread mistake, the one that serves as the foundation for almost every other failure at the poker table, is what I call the passive entry trap. This occurs during the pre-flop stage, a phase of the game that most people think they have mastered because they've seen a few starting hand charts. But there is a massive difference between knowing which cards to play and knowing how to play them. The recreational player sees a hand that looks pretty, something like King 9 suited, Jack 10 offsuit, or even a small pocket pair like 5s. They see a raise in front of them, and their brain immediately goes into negotiation mode. They think, it's only a 3 big blind raise. If I call, I might hit a set. If I hit a flush draw, I can see what happens. It's a low-risk way to win a big pot. This is the greatest lie in poker. By calling just to see, you are making a high-risk, low-reward decision. You are entering a pot without the initiative, which means you are allowing your opponent to dictate the narrative of the hand. You are also almost certainly playing out of position, which is the equivalent of trying to win a boxing match with one hand tied behind your back and a blindfold on. When you call pre-flop, you are essentially telling the table, I have a hand that is good enough to play, but not good enough to lead. You have marked yourself as a target. In my 1,000 hand study, I saw this play out in a tragic loop. The amateur calls, the flop comes, and they miss entirely about 70% of the time. They check fold, losing those 3 big blinds. They do this 10 times in a row, and suddenly they've lost 30 big blinds without ever seeing a turn card. But the real disaster happens when they partially hit. They flop a middle pair or a weak top pair. Now they are married to the pot. They call the flop. They check call the turn. By the river, they are facing a massive bet, and they have no idea where they stand. They have no plan, no leverage, and no information. They are simply guessing. This curiosity call is a slow-motion car crash. It's a leak that feels like a standard play. But it's actually a systematic donation to the more aggressive, disciplined players at the table. Winning players don't play hands, they play strategies. They either 3-bet to take control of the pot, or they fold and move on. They don't pay to see, they make you pay to see. If you want to stop losing money today, the first thing you must do is burn your calling button pre-flop. If a hand isn't worth a raise or a 3-bet, it's probably not worth your chips. The second mistake is the hero call ego, and it is where the most significant portion of a player's bankroll goes to die. This happens on the later streets, the turn and the river, where the pots are at their largest and the pressure is at its peak. The recreational player faces a large bet, often a triple barrel, where the opponent has bet on every single street. Their brain begins to construct a story to justify a call. They think, he's been aggressive all night, he could be bluffing. He's trying to buy the pot because that ace on the river is a scare card. I have second pair, I'm going to keep him honest. This is a classic case of projecting your own psychology onto your opponent. You think they are bluffing because you would bluff in that spot, or because you simply want them to be bluffing so you can win the pot. But the data from my 1,000-hand study tells a very different story. In reality, at low to mid stakes, the average player is under-bluffing significantly. When someone bets 3 streets for a large size, especially on the river, they have the goods an overwhelming majority of the time. The bluffer that the amateur is desperately looking for is a ghost, a statistical anomaly that they use to justify a mathematically losing call. This mistake is driven by ego. Humans have a natural evolutionary disdain for being lied to. We don't want to get bluffed. We want to be the hero who catches the liar and takes the chips. But in poker, the hero usually ends up broke. Every time you make an undisciplined hero call, you are gambling on a very low-frequency event. Even if you win one of those calls, the other 4 times you lose will completely wipe out your profits. You are fighting against the math. The professional understands that folding is winning. A fold that saves you 40 big blinds is exactly the same as a bet that wins you 40 big blinds, but the amateur doesn't see it that way. To them, a fold feels like a defeat. They would rather pay the hero tax and see the opponent's cards than live with the uncertainty of wondering if they were bluffed. This need for certainty is a financial anchor. It keeps you from ever reaching the level of a winning player because you are constantly giving back your hard-earned profits to opponents who simply had it. If you want to fix this, you have to kill your ego. You have to be okay with the possibility that someone might be bluffing you. You have to realize that making a disciplined fold based on range analysis is a much bigger win than making a lucky call based on a hunch. Mistake number 3 is what I call one-pair monogamy. This is a psychological attachment to a hand that was strong at the beginning of the play, but has become increasingly vulnerable as the board developed. This pattern showed up in almost every single orbit of the 1,000 hands I reviewed. A player raises with ace-king and the flop comes king-7 deuce. At that moment, they feel like the king of the world. They have top pair, top kicker, they are ahead. But then, the turn is a jack of hearts, and the river is a 10 of hearts. Suddenly, there are 3 hearts on the board and 4 cards to a straight. The opponent, who has been calling along, suddenly leads out with a massive bet. The amateur's brain is still stuck on the flop. They remember the feeling of power they had when they hit that king. They think, I have top pair, I can't fold this. They ignore the fact that the board has become a minefield. They ignore the fact that their monster has been downgraded to a bluff catcher. This tunnel vision is a byproduct of emotional investment. The player feels that because they hit the hand, they are entitled to win the pot. They view the turn and river cards as personal attacks rather than new pieces of information. The professional, however, views hand strength as a dynamic, shifting variable. A hand that is the nuts on the flop can be absolute trash by the river. The ability to reevaluate every single street is what separates the winners from the losers. If you cannot fold top pair when the board texture clearly favors your opponent's range, you are essentially playing with your cards face up. You are telling the world, I have a pair and I am never going to fold it, so please bet big if you can beat a pair. And they will. They will bet, and they will take your money, hand after hand. This attachment kills objectivity. To solve this, you have to stop looking at your cards as fixed values. You have to start seeing them as relative values. You have to ask yourself, What is the best hand my opponent can have here? What is the worst? And where does my one pair sit in that range? If the answer is at the bottom, you must have the courage to throw that hand in the muck. It doesn't matter how pretty it looked on the flop. The only thing that matters is its value at the moment the final bet is made. Before we move into the final and most devastating mistakes, we need to address the bridge between knowing and doing. This is where most players fail. They watch a video like this, they agree with every word, and then they go to the tables and make the exact same mistakes again. Why? Because under pressure, your brain defaults to its oldest, most comfortable habits. You don't need more theory, you need a system of execution. This is why I spent months developing The Mind of a Grinder, Series 2, the Premium Collection. This isn't just another set of ebooks, it's a mental framework designed to override your recreational instincts. It consists of 10 specialized volumes that cover everything from the technical nuances of PLO to the high-level psychological warfare of tournament poker. We tackle the specific leaks we're talking about today, like how to stop the curiosity call and how to master the art of the disciplined fold. For a limited time, I am offering the entire collection for $29.89. I want you to think about that number. That is less than the cost of a single poorly timed hero call at a $1-2 table. It is an investment in your future self, the version of you that doesn't tilt, doesn't chase, and doesn't donate. This is a launch price, and it is the lowest it will ever be. You can find the link in the pinned comment below. You can continue to pay the recreational tax every time you sit down to play, or you can decide right now to become a student of the game. Now let's get back to the patterns, because mistake number 4 is where most players completely destroy their win rate through sheer lack of imagination. Mistake number 4 is the binary bluffing problem. When I analyzed those 1,000 hands, I noticed that recreational players almost always fall into one of two extremes when it comes to bluffing. The first group is the Honest Abe category. These players never bluff. They only bet when they have it. While this might seem safe, it makes them the easiest people in the world to play against. All an opponent has to do is fold whenever Honest Abe bets and steal the pot whenever he checks. They are essentially playing with their cards face up, and they wonder why they never get lucky enough to win a big pot. The second group is the random chaos category. These players bluff because they are bored, frustrated, or because they have a feeling. They choose a hand like 7-deuce offsuit and decide to shove all in on a board that makes 0 sense for their range. Their bluffs tell no story. They don't represent anything. They're just clicking buttons and hoping for a fold. Both of these extremes are a death sentence for your bankroll. Successful bluffing is not about guts or aggression. It is about storytelling and blockers. A pro bluffs because they know that based on the action, it is impossible, or very unlikely, for their opponent to have a strong hand. They use blockers, the cards in their own hand, to mathematically reduce the number of combinations of winning hands the opponent can hold. If you aren't thinking about what your opponent has and what you are representing, you aren't bluffing. You're just donating. In the 1,000 hand sample, I saw so many bluffs that were doomed before they were even made. Players betting into 3 people on a coordinated board, or betting small when they should be betting big to maximize fold equity. If you don't understand the why behind your bluff, you shouldn't be doing it. You have to learn to find the spots where the math dictates a bluff is profitable. You have to become a player who is balanced, someone who is dangerous because the opponent never knows if you have the nuts or the air. That uncertainty is where your profit comes from. If you are predictable, you are a target. If you are balanced, you are a threat. The 5th mistake is the most insidious because it doesn't even look like a poker mistake. It's emotional carryover, or what we commonly call tilt. But it's not the screaming, keyboard-smashing tilt you see in memes. It's the quiet tilt. It's the subtle shift in your decision-making that happens after you lose a pot you should have won. In my study, I watched a player lose a standard 60-40 flip on the very first hand of their session. They didn't get angry. They didn't type in the chat. But for the next 2 hours, their VPIP, voluntary put-in pot, increased by 15%. They started calling those curiosity hands. They started making those hero calls. They were trying to win back the money they lost. They were no longer playing the cards in front of them. They were playing against the ghost of the hand they lost an hour ago. This carryover is a virus. It infects your logic and replaces it with a desperate need for justice. You feel like the game owes you something. You feel like you need to punish the player who got lucky against you. And so, you start making suboptimal plays. You lose your discipline. You lose your edge. Winning players have a mental reset button. They understand that each hand is a completely independent event. The cards don't know who won the last pot. The deck has no memory. If you lost a stack on a bad beat, that money is gone. It's no longer yours. If you are still thinking about it when the next hand is dealt, you are already losing. You have to be able to close the book on every hand the moment the chips are pushed. If you can't do that, you should stand up and walk away from the table. Because playing while emotionally compromised is the same as playing with half your brain turned off. I saw players destroy entire weeks of profit in a single hour of quiet tilt. They weren't playing bad because they didn't know the strategy. They were playing bad because they had lost control of their own minds. Mastery of the game begins with mastery of yourself. Now look at the big picture. We've covered the passive preflop entries, the hero call ego, the one-pair monogamy, the binary bluffing, and the emotional carryover. When you see them all together, they form a clear, undeniable pattern. This is the amateur script. It is the way most people play, and it is the reason why the house and the pros always win in the long run. These 5 mistakes are not just leaks. They are the very definition of a losing player. But here is the good news. Now that you have seen the script, you don't have to follow it anymore. You have been given the cheat codes to the recreational mind. You now know exactly what your opponents are doing wrong, and more importantly, you know what you have been doing wrong. Poker is a game of marginal gains. It is a game of avoiding the catastrophic errors that everyone else is making. You don't have to be a genius to win. You just have to be more disciplined than the person sitting next to you. You have to be the one who folds when everyone else calls. You have to be the one who resets when everyone else tilts. You have to be the one who bluffs with logic when everyone else bluffs with feeling. The 1,000 hands I watched were a tragedy, but they were also a roadmap. They showed me exactly where the road ends in a cliff, and now I am showing you. The question is, what are you going to do with this information? Are you going to go back to the tables and click call because you're curious? Are you going to shove because you're frustrated? Or are you going to take the path of the grinder? The path of discipline, the path of math, and the path of profit. The patterns are exposed. The secrets are out. The amateur script has been burned. It's time to start writing your own story. One where you are the one taking the chips hand after hand, session after session. The game is waiting. Now, go play with a clear mind and a sharp edge. The table is yours.